In this video, we're going to work on constructing truth tables, and in particular, answering truth table questions in Canvas. And I strongly recommend that when you're doing this, you first work out your truth table on a piece of paper. That's the easiest place to put together a whole truth table, and then enter your answers on Canvas. So I'm going to be doing my truth tables all on Canvas so you can see them. But again, for this first step, I would definitely recommend making your truth table on a piece of paper first. So we've got a truth table problem here. It says to construct a truth table for this formula, not P and Q or Q. And so what I've done is I've gone ahead and made a table here in Canvas that has all the parts that I'm going to need to fill in truth values for. And so this will sort of simulate you doing it on a piece of paper. Now I had to make individual columns for each of the things that I'm going to put in a truth value for. You on a piece of paper can just write the formula and write the truth values under each part as you need to. So the first thing we need to do, of course, is fill in the truth values for just P and Q over here on the left. And we always do this the same way. It's true, true, false, false for P. And then just alternating true and false for Q. And the only time that changes is if we have more than two sentence letters. Like if we have P, Q, and R, then we have to do it differently. But as long as it's just P and Q, that's always how you do it. So then what you're going to do is you're going to fill those in for P and Q over here in the formula you're trying to figure out. So we've got a P right here. So I fill in the P truth values. And we've got two Q's, so we'll go ahead and fill in the Q truth values for those. I'm just copying these over, right, from where Q is right here. Just make sure it's the same on each row. So true, false for all the Q's. And then what we need to do is check and see, okay, what's the next thing that I fill in? And the next thing you should fill in is whatever you have enough information to fill in. So suppose you tried to fill in the truth values under this negation sign here at the beginning of the formula. Well, in order to do that, right, you just need the opposite truth value of whatever the negation applies to. Well, in this case, the parentheses tell us that the negation applies to this whole thing, P and Q. But I haven't worked out the truth value of that yet, so I don't know what to fill in for the negation. So what we need to do before we can fill in the negation is we need to figure out what the truth value is for this and, what's going to tell us the truth value of P and Q together. So if you go ahead and you can double check in your book if you don't remember what the truth table for this and symbol looks like, but it's going to be true only when P and Q are both true, right? So they're both true here on the top line, so it's true. Here on the second line, Q is false. So P and Q can't be true, right? It must also be false. On the third line, P is false, so for the same reason, P and Q has to be false. And on the bottom line, they're both false. Well, certainly, if P and Q are both false, then the sentence P and Q is going to be false. Okay, so now we have the truth values for P and Q, and we can go ahead and figure out the truth values for not P and Q. It's just going to be the opposite truth value, right? We just take the truth values from this column and flip them. So on the top row, we get false, and then true for the rest. Okay, so now we've got that worked out. Now the thing we can fill in at this point is this or over here, right? Because this says either this whole thing, not P and Q, is true, or Q is true. One of those two has to be true. That's what this or symbol says, right? So now we have enough information to fill that out. And that's going to be true just in case either we have a true over here under our not symbol, because remember, that's the truth value for this whole thing together, not P and Q. That's the truth value that's filled in under the not here. So either that's true or Q is true. As long as one of them, at least one of them is true, then we get a true here under the or symbol. So let's go ahead and do that. So on the top row, we've got a true for Q. So we know for sure we've got a true for our or here. Now on the second row, Q is false. So we have to go look over here under the negation for the truth value of this whole big thing. Well, over here it's true. So that's going to give us true. And actually, now that we know what we're doing, we can take a kind of shortcut. Well, if I look over here, this is true in the next two rows also. So that's going to be enough to make the or true in the next two rows. So it turns out that actually this whole formula turns out to be true in all 4 rows. So this is actually the sort of final answer that we're interested in, these truth values that we have under the OR. Whatever the last column of truth values you figure out is, that's the truth value of the whole formula, right? That's the truth table for this particular formula, which is what we're looking for. So when we get to answering these on Canvas, this is going to be the column that we're interested in, right? So this is like, if you think about a math problem, where sometimes you have to show your work, filling in the truth values for all of these other columns, that's your work. But this is your final answer, the truth values for this last column here. So that's how you should fill out your truth tables on a piece of paper, right? You want to fill them in step by step, and you want to just fill in the truth values for whatever you have enough information to fill them in for until you get to the last part, and then that's your final answer. So once you've once you're comfortable doing that, you'll get to the point where you're taking the quiz or you're doing this week's challenge. And then you'll have to answer some truth table questions on Canvas. So what I'm not going to make you do is create your own table from scratch and fill in all the truth values for all the individual parts of all the formulas, because it's a tremendous amount of work, and the table function on Canvas can be kind of wonky. And so it's just, it's an unnecessary hassle. So there are going to be 2 kinds of questions that we'll be dealing with instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a kind of practice quiz here so that you can see the 2 types of truth table questions that we'll be dealing with. So the truth table questions on your quiz this week are all of this type. They're all like this first question that we're going to do. So it says to fill in the missing truth values and to be sure to type only one truth value, either true or false, in each box. So the reason for that is that these are basically fill in the blank questions, and Canvas is only smart enough to recognize a specific thing that I tell it to recognize. So all it's looking for is either a T or an F for true or false in each of these boxes. So if you go in these boxes and you try to line up truth values with each part of the formula, then Canvas is going to say that your answer is wrong. So don't do that. What you should do is work out the truth table on a piece of paper first, and then just enter in these boxes the sort of final answer to the truth table, the truth value of the whole formula on each row. That is the last truth value that you're able to fill in. Right, so you should have just one set of truth values here. I just made those up. I have no idea if they're right. So I'm going to be using a kind of shortcut method because I'm not going to write mine out on paper. But you should definitely write all of your truth tables out on paper. But I'll be thinking kind of a shortcut way here. I look at this formula and it says, okay, either P is true or P if and only if Q is true. So the whole thing is really about this or. It says either the P is true or this other thing in parentheses, the P if and only if Q is true. One of those has to be true. As long as that's the case, the whole thing's going to be true. So the first row is easy because P is true, right? So that means at least one of them must be true, so the whole thing's going to be true. So I get a true on the first row, P is true again on the second row, so for the same reason I get true here. And now I just have to think about the next 2 rows, because P is false, so this side of the disjunction is going to be false. So the only way for the whole thing to be true is going to be if this side of it is true, if P if and only if Q is true. So again, you can look it up in the book if you don't remember offhand, but P if and only if Q, P double arrow Q, is going to be true only on the rows where P and Q have the same truth value. So if we look at the third row, P and Q have different truth values. So this is going to be false on the third row, and P is also false on the third row, right? So we have false or false. Well, that's not going to make the or true, so we're going to have false on the third row. But on the bottom row, P and Q have the same truth value. That truth value is false, but all that we're trying to figure out for P if and only if Q is whether they're the same. So since they're the same, P if and only if Q is true. So now we've got P is false or P if and only if Q, which is true. So we've got true on one side of the disjunction, and that's enough to make the whole thing true. So that kind of shortcut method I was using, once you get really comfortable with truth values, you can think about it that way. But until you do, I definitely recommend working out the whole truth table step by step on a piece of paper. But the final answer that you submit in the quiz question on Canvas should just be one truth value. It should be the truth value of the whole formula on each row. Okay. So that would be my final answer here, and I would go ahead and click next and go to the next question. So here's the second kind of truth table question that you'll see, and this is what the challenge for this week looks like. So this says copy the following table into the text box and then use it to construct a truth table for this formula. So making your own table in Canvas is kind of a hassle, but what you can do if I sort of give you a template for a table like this is you can click and drag to highlight it and then copy it, Control-C on a PC or Command-C on a Mac, and then paste it with Control-V on a PC or Command-V on a Mac, and that puts the table into the text box here for you with the right number of boxes. Now, one thing that you're definitely going to want to do for questions like this, and any question where you need to type in a long answer, is down here at the bottom right of the text box, you can click and drag it down so that you can see more of your answer at once, and that makes life a whole lot easier. So now what I need to do is I need to fill in this truth table. Okay, well, I know I'm going to need P and I know I'm going to need Q. So I can go ahead and just type in P and Q here. And then I need to figure out the truth value for this formula here, Q and not P. So we can go ahead and use the equation editor and type that in, Q and not P. Insert. Okay, so this is going to be very common when you're filling in entire truth tables on your own, that the alignment will get a little bit messed up. And you can try to work with it and try to make things line up a little better if you want to. But I'm not going to be super concerned about that. So if your if your symbols are looking a little bit lower, that's fine. As long as you get the right things in each cell, you'll get full credit for it. So don't worry too much about that. Okay, so now what we need to do is fill in our truth values. Well, we're going to fill in the truth values for P and Q in just the same way that we do on a piece of paper, right? So true, true, false, false for P, and then true, false, Q. And then again, what I would strongly recommend is that you work out the truth value for this formula step by step on a piece of paper, like we did in this first problem, right? Work it out for each stage of the truth of the formula, because it's much easier to avoid making mistakes that way. But again, since I don't have a piece of paper to show you, I'm just going to go ahead and use the kind of shortcut method of just thinking through what the truth value of the whole formula is going to be to get my answers here. Because just like on the last quiz question, you're going to want just one truth value in each of these boxes. So don't give me, the truth value of Q, the truth value of P, the truth value of not P, and then finally the truth value of the whole thing. Just give me one truth value in each box, just the final answer. You don't have to show your work, right? Okay, so let's think about this top row. Well, the formula we're evaluating says that Q is true and not P is true, right? So taking a look at the first row, well, okay, Q is true, so we've at least got a shot at the whole thing being true, right? This side of the conjunction is true. Now we need to know if the other side of the conjunction is true. Is not P true? Well, P is true, which means not P has to be false. So this side of the conjunction is going to be false. And since it's a conjunction, it's an and statement, instead of a disjunction or an or statement, both sides have to be true in order for it to be true. So the first row here is going to be false because one of our conjuncts is false. On the second row, our other conjunct, Q, is false. Well, that's also going to make the whole conjunction false, right? It can't be that both of these are true if one of them is false. So we get false on the first two lines. And on the third line, Q is true, so we've got that the left side is true, so we have a shot at truth here. And now we want to know if not P is true. Well, P is false. Not P just has the opposite truth value of P. So not P is going to be true also. So Q and not P are both true. That's just what the formula says. So we get true in this box. Okay, now we can go ahead and work out what the last row is going to be. Q is false and P is false. But if we think about what this whole formula is, well, it's a conjunction, right? It's conjoining Q and not P. And we know that the truth table for conjunctions, there's only one row of that truth table that comes out true. right? It's only going to be true when they're both true. So we should expect that we're going to get false down here, but let's check just to make sure. Because it could be that these are related in some way that we've messed up and we get confused. So let's double check. So taking a look at Q, Q is going to be false. Well, that tells us that the left side of our conjunction is false. So the whole conjunction is false. So we get false just like we expected. Okay. So again, that was kind of shortcut thinking about what the truth values are here. I definitely advocate that you work out the whole truth table step by step on a piece of paper and then just type the final answer into Canvas. That's the best way of going about these kinds of questions. But those are the two ways that you're going to deal with entering the answers into Canvas. Either it'll be like question 1, where you just have to type the values in and I've provided the rest of the table for you. Or in the case of something like your challenge this week and maybe on your midterm exam, you'll have a question like this where I'll give you the kind of structure of the table, I'll give you the boxes, and you just copy and paste those into the text box, and then you need to fill in the formulas at the top, and you need to fill in the truth values. Okay, so that's how you work with truth tables in Canvas. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to post them in the discussions, and I'll be happy to help you.